Let's recap some of those changes under Victoria's staged move out of lockdown. From September the 13th, most stage 4 restrictions will continue in Melbourne, with a few notable changes. The citywide curfew will come into force an hour later at 9 p.m. Melburnians will be able to exercise for up to 2 hours a day, and people living by themselves will be allowed a social bubble, meaning another person can visit them at home. Once Victoria is able to keep a daily average of between 30 and 50 new cases a day, up to 5 people will be able to gather outdoors. All parents will be able to send their children back to childcare and kindergarten. And prep to grade 2 students, as well as students at specialist schools and those in years 11 and 12, will be back in classrooms.
When Victoria can go for 2 weeks with a statewide average of fewer than 5 cases a day, it will move to recovery step 3. And that is when Melbourne's curfew will finally be lifted and groups of 10 will be allowed to gather outdoors. Retail and hairdressers will reopen, but beauty salons will stay shut. And cafes and restaurants and bars will be allowed outdoor dining. The government hopes to move to recovery step 4 in November if there are no new cases for 2 weeks, allowing for groups of 50 outside and the lifting of all limits on exercise. Retail will reopen and sport will resume, but with caps on the number of spectators.
There has been a lot of fierce reaction this morning, both pro and against these plans, the roadmap, and the head of Victoria's peak business organisation has described it as a road to nowhere. And Mads, you've been talking to some people in the northern suburbs of Melbourne about how it's going to affect them.
Lisa and Michael, good morning. Yes, so I'm here in Preston today, which is Melbourne's north, and I've spoken to a lot of business people over the last 24 hours or so, and I think that it's pretty fair to say that most of them are in lockstep with that view that this is a very, very slow road out, a road to nowhere, were the words of the Chamber of Commerce, and that view is widely shared. Now, the rest of our friends around Australia are going to have to get used to us here in Melbourne looking a little bit wild and woolly on their telly, because hairdressers, as you just said, are not going to be able to open until the end of October. That's one of the businesses that is not going to be able to open until that third step. And even then, only if there are fewer than 5 cases for the preceding 14 days in the entirety of the state. It's a very, very high bar. Let's talk more about this with Yajam Foor. We spoke to her at the start of this second lockdown. She owns the Afro Trends hairdressing salon here in Preston. Good morning to you. Thanks for speaking to us.
Good morning, Madeline.
I know that you watched that press conference. What did you think when you saw Daniel Andrews say it's for you opening at the end of October at the earliest?
I was very devastated. It wasn't a news that I was expecting at all.
You were surprised?
I was quite surprised.
Why is that?
Because based on what he delivered before we came to lockdown and what has happened, there is a huge difference. All we knew is after 6 weeks, probably there should be new strategy in place, but not as this harsh.
You've already been closed for 8 weeks. You're looking at being closed for another 6 weeks at the very least. What is that going to do to your livelihood?
That really set me back financially, because obviously we don't even know for sure that this after 6 weeks things will be back in place or not. Yeah,
it's a very high bar, as I said, fewer than 5 cases for 14 days. Do you feel confident that we'll get there?
I'm not too sure.
I know that you will want the health of your customers and your own health to be your own priority. In your own mind, how do you balance those two things, the health and the business?
It's very difficult because it's very hard. It's like living in limbo. You don't know what to expect. You want to be positive, at the same time you have to face the reality. It looks like Daniel Andrews is pretty much making decisions for our lives.
I know as well that you applied to get JobKeeper, but you've had some issues with it. You've only had 2 payments.
Since coronavirus, only last 2 months I've been able to receive anything.
And you don't know why?
And I still don't know why.
And also you asked for a reduction in rent from your landlord, which you're supposed to be able to negotiate, and you haven't received that for most of this time.
As it is today, I'm still paying full rent, even though we are in lockdown.
How are the bills for you?
It's very difficult. Bills are coming in still, and you still have to pay your bills.
Can you continue your business? Is this viable?
I am very much determined to continue my business because, like I said before, it has been a hard working to come this far. So to me, I'm not going to allow coronavirus to defeat me. So I'm continuing and I'm willing to go into fight.
You're a tough one. I just want to know as well, I know that you're a single mum with 3 kids. How has that been for you, having to deal with that, and for your children as well?
It's very difficult because obviously they're all doing school at home. So you're going to have to cook, you have to monitor them to do the right thing because they get tired, they stress out, and they don't want to do their work anymore. So basically you constantly on their back, make sure that things get done. At the same time, you're still worried about business, you're worried about finances, you're worried about everything. So it looks like we don't know what to think of future.
It sounds exhausting.
It is very draining. Yes.
Well, look, yeah, thank you for speaking to us this morning. Our very best wishes to you and to all of the businesses going through this. Lisa and Michael, the Premier says that the reason that we are having this very slow move out of lockdown is because the modelling shows that if we open up too quickly, then we could easily be back in very harsh restrictions as well. So that is what the Premier is saying. I think it's very obvious to say, though, that most businesses feel enormously frustrated.
Devil's choice for the Premier. Madeline, thank you so much for that. In regional Victoria, residents there are living under looser stage 3 restrictions, meaning they are further along the timeline of the state's steps to so-called COVID normal. So they start on step 2. From midnight on September the 13th, regional Victorians will be allowed to have gatherings of up to 5 people outdoors. People who live alone will be allowed to form a so-called social bubble with someone. And there is good news for parents with outdoor playgrounds and pools reopening. All students will be back in the classrooms for term 3, and that starts on October the 5th.
Once regional Victoria records averages of fewer than 5 cases each day, it'll move to step 3, meaning there'll be no restrictions on leaving your home. 10 people will be allowed to gather outside and groups of 10 will be able to dine outdoors. And real estate auctions will also be able to resume.